Yeah, I had a question about data science for Philippe, and here we are. So we're not data scientists, we use a software to analyze the communication about the dengue. So maybe it could help you to better communicate and make the dengue more famous in the world. So we analyze mainly two regions, India and Brazil, and a little bit Europe. Next slide, please. So that's the stream of message on a year basis. Left side, India, Brazil on the right side. And what we have seen, we had several ideas that we test with the software, and we eliminate most of it, and we kept some important things according to us. So as we see in India, there is one high peak of communication during whole year. In the opposite, Brazil, there is a continuous stream of messages for at least 4 months with high communication, and then you still have messages, but in a less importance. If you see the media type, you see the Twitter is the big majority in comparison with online news, blogs, newspaper. But next slide, please. So if you see the media types, the highest peak for Brazil is followed by the newspaper, by the blogs, or by other articles. But you have more Twitter peaks, but they aren't followed in Brazil with the classical online medias. So that could be a point that sometimes Twitter is excited, but not the rest of the journalists. And then we took the same media types, but for an 8 days basis for the highest peak in India and in Brazil. In India, you go to 93% of all the messages from Twitter. So a very big majority of all the messages are coming from Twitter. But for the same timing in Brazil, the proportion of media types doesn't change. And one thing we had attention is that the fifth media type for Brazil is YouTube. Next slide, please. And so we discovered there is 11,000 videos on YouTube. Even with Minecraft, it's 12 minutes videos. You can play it with a guy who's talking about dengue and his family who is sick. We even saw a message in Twitter talking about WhatsApp, saying, I luckily live in the Portuguese area of Brussels, that WhatsApp is still as the water for the mosquito who give dengue. So dengue could be a metaphor for WhatsApp in Brazil. Next slide, please. Also, we checked to the general themes, the most common words who are associated with dengue in India and in Brazil. In India, we noticed there is a lot of names, and it's national or provincial politicians like Narendra Modi or Satyendra Jain, sorry for the pronunciation, or Arvind Kejriwal. Okay, I'm not pronouncing that one. There is no name in Brazil, but there is institution in Brazil. So we use different words from institution, UNICEF, World Health Organizations, and we saw that these institutions appear in 5% of the result in Brazil, but only 1% in India. So we thought that if you would like to communicate in India about dengue, you should use a politician or a public figure, a personality, a human being. But if you want to communicate in Brazil, the institution, the official institution, as well national or international, could be a good use to communicate about dengue. And last but not least, in both countries, the dengue is associated with another disease who is related to mosquito, the Zika in Brazil, and the chikungunya in India. So, please.
So, Adrien gave already some of our results, but how did we come to these results? What we did was we looked for some places where there were dengue outbreaks in a certain region on a certain moment of time, and we saw that the words they were using were quite different. In India, for instance, they use a lot of mood words, while in Brazil it's more about influencers like organizations, institutions. So we try to use this to indicate like early influencers or communication strategies like the Minecraft we saw. Next slide, please. So this is a case for India. Some general information, but I'm going to skip this one. It's so I was looking for some data from the health map, and I was looking for where there is an outbreak in which month. And in this case, like the green arrow indicates, there was an outbreak in this region, and so we were working on this region. On the next slide, you will see it's the Karnataka region where there was an outbreak in June. And on the next slide, we will see these are the words all from different months. And we see the last months there are more words related to suffering, patients against suffering, prepared. So the months before are they're using more mood words about people getting disease. On the next slide, it's Brazil. The same. No, you can do the next slide too. We did the same thing, and we investigated the eastern region. So in the eastern region, on the next slide, we can see the slide after. That we did the same, but then for organizations, institutions, and there the word Minecraft came up. So we saw this original campaign they use, where they use Minecraft videos to create awareness. It's good for the youngsters to create awareness about dengue. And on the next slide, we did a small focus on Europe.
I'm gonna be very quick. So we can see in a timeline that Europe is following Brazil. It's the same trends with the same pikes. There is a little bit higher in Brazil. For the language, Spanish is dominating everything in Europe, and it's with the most common theme. It's logical because a lot of countries from South America appears, and also for some reasons there is a lot of YouTube video in Europe, also 11,000. We haven't seen Minecraft, but it looks like, but we need to further investigate it. For Europe, it's a disease in other countries, but not in Europe, and it looks like there is no awareness for dengue in Europe.